I would like to start. Petrotrin's acreage is only second to the state. The state has given to Petrotrin 1.1 million acres, 22% onshore and 78% offshore. That is the area we have entrusted to manage, second only to the state in terms of land. We have acreage in the west, Trinma Field. Close to about 900 wells have been drilled there. Today, we have 288 producing wells, and even more than 288 idle wells. We have 300 idle wells requiring maintenance. These wells are supported by 78 structures. Block stations, about 13, platforms, about 23, riser platforms, about 13, clusters, another 29. Arising out of those wells and out of those structures, we produce about 50 barrels of oil per day per well, with average well depth of about 5,600 feet. And let me hasten to add that this did not start yesterday, but High Seas 1 was completed drilling in 1954, which gave birth to Trinma. Therefore, we have structures over 50 years old. And the estimate reserves at this time, P1, P2, P3, is 48 million barrels. And estimate heavy oil reserves is in the region of 20 million barrels. That's the West Coast. Right? He said the only entity I can think about at this time with all this acreage on north, south, east, west, and the land is Petrotrin. So a snapshot. Let me move from the West Coast and move quickly into land. What do we have, Mr. Chairman? Members of this committee, over 9,000 wells have been drilled on land. At present, there are 3,285 producing wells, 2,920 idle wells, in 29 fields with average barrels of oil per day per well in the single digit. Therefore, in fact, you can term it, we are operating a stripper field. Estimated reserves on land is in the region of 80 million barrels, and estimated oil reserves on land in terms of a heavy oil exceeds 13 million barrels. How do we recover these reserves? Mr. Chairman, this is the complexity which we go into. I spoke about the West Coast, but on land we have 24 lease operators. We have 10 farm outs. We have 24 joint ventures. And you will hear further from the Vice President ENP with respect to that. And what these lease operatorship, farm out, IPSC, what do you get out of that? At this time, we are getting about 45,000 barrels of oil per day. With gas, approximately 134 million cubic feet per day. And if you use barrel of oil equivalent per day, Petrotrin produces at this time is the #1 producer of oil in the country, but it also produces close to 70,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day in oil and gas. That is a snapshot of Petrotrin in terms of ENP. As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we do have two core areas. And permit me now to share with you refining and marketing. The first major oil refinery in this country was at Pointe-à-Pierre. And the refinery is still at Pointe-à-Pierre today. We have about 27, and that was since just after 1910, 1913 to be exact. Refinery has about 27 plants online. For example, we have a CDU, crude unit, we have vacuum unit, we have visbreaker unit, we have FCCU cat cracker, we have sulfuric acid alkylation unit, sulfuric acid regeneration unit, slabs processing hydrogen sulfide removal, we have naphtha separation, we have bitumen, we have kerosene oil, mild hydrotreater, hydrogen generation unit, sulfur recovery unit, sulfur pellet production, continuous catalytic reformer, isomerization unit, hydrotreater, and I can go on and go on. LP3, jet treater, water treatment, cooling tanks, and on and on. That's the complexity I want to share with you for a moment. With about 78 tanks for crude, for fuel oil, for jet, for gas oil, for finished mogas, for mogas components, for CCR feed, for HTU charge. Complex operations. I just shared with you we have our local crude about 45,000 barrels per day, and therefore to run with a refinery of 160,000 barrels per day, you need to import crude, and we do have importation of that crude. That connects, what connects the refinery to exploration and production is pipelines. And Mr. Chairman, we have in excess of 1,363 miles of pipeline onshore and offshore. That is really distance in nautical miles from Trinidad and Tobago to Miami. That is the complex operation we are operating under. 1,363 miles of pipeline. So it's not an easy operation. It's a difficult operation. It's a complex operation in all areas. The task is great to manage Petrotrin, but even more difficult, Mr. Chairman, with low oil prices. The recent decline in oil prices and the decline in refinery margins have resulted in reduced revenue and cash flow of the company. Concerns we have are in the areas of managing operating costs, reversing decline in oil production and increasing reserves, improving productivity and work performance, inadequate succession planning and competency gaps, aging infrastructure. As I mentioned, we started some of these operations as way back as 1954. Improving safety performance, debt burden based on existing bonds. We do have that. Let me talk a little bit about liquidity, and thank you for the opportunity for you to allow me, Mr. Chairman, just to deal with some of the issues and some of the challenges which I have just given to you a brief snapshot of Petrotrin, upstream and downstream. Let me know, come home. Challenges. Immediate and short-term challenge to liquidity brought about by the generation of insufficient cash from operations to service debt and fund our limited capital expenditure program. Cash from operations has been impacted severely by continued low oil prices. Even though we have been experiencing relatively good refining margins, this has been offset by the lower market prices for refined products and maintaining operating costs. The current external and internal environments with continuing credit downgrades by rating agencies also make it increasingly difficult to manage liquidity via short and medium-term borrowing for trade financing and working capital support. That's a challenge of liquidity. Upstream. Our upstream assets are mature assets, which I tried to share with you this morning, which experience natural decline rates that can only be significantly offset by new oil additions from drilling and EOR programs. Drilling and EOR programs, in conjunction with optimization of oil production initiatives, initially planned to increase and also maintain production volumes, have become uneconomical in the current low oil price environment. Our current challenge is to find and pursue those opportunities that have higher productivity and or lower costs to implement. Downstream. Over the last year or so, we have seen, Mr. Chairman, remarkable improvements in all aspects of refinery operational performance, namely throughput, utilization, energy efficiency, and product yield. We still, however, face issues with reliability of our operating plants and utilities. infrastructure that may threaten our ability to sustain these improvements. Current global refining margins are good and are reflected in the gross refining margins that we obtain. However, the forecast is that refining margins will not be as strong as last year and will be challenged to generate cash from our refining operations in the face of lower margins and continued high operating costs. Asset integrity. I mentioned to you about the number of pipelines we have at the company. I mentioned to you, Chairman, and members of the committee, the number of structures and the number of fields we do have. Several well-publicized incidents in the recent past have highlighted the issues Petrotrin faces with asset integrity. In addition to the risks this poses to the environment and human health and safety, there's also significant impact on operations continuity. We are in the process of quantifying our asset integrity, upgrade requirements, and diligent pursuit of any asset integrity upgrade program will utilize significant amounts of scarce cash. I'd like to also touch on competence and succession. Our current reality is that we lack the required number and quality in most of the key competencies that are necessary for our continued survival and sustainability. These include geological, geophysical, and petroleum engineering, process engineering, reliability engineering, project management, and finance. HSE performance. In spite of improvements, our current HSE performance is not up to industry standards, and we must focus efforts to develop and maintain the kind of HSE awareness and culture that will minimize the number of HSE incidents. Mr. Chairman, we are committed to work in partnership in order to be successful in the challenges which I have just mentioned. We are committed to work with the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the bargaining body, major bargaining body, the National Petroleum Staff Association, and the Estate Police Association. We are committed to do that. Why are we committed to do that? It's as follows. That over the last 10 years, this company has provided to the government 43 billion TT dollars in government take. That included petroleum levy, royalties, supplemental petroleum tax, green fund levy, income taxes. In fact, 1 year was as high as 6.5 billion TT dollars. In addition to that, Petrotrin has about 1,000 registered vendors, approximately that, and another 2,939 vendors in terms, 1,000 registered vendors is permanent. And we have a wage bill, a salaries wage bill of approximately 1.8 billion people, $1.8 billion per annum for over 5,000 people. Let me clearly state, Mr. Chairman, that since 2006, Petrotrin has been downgraded. December 21st, 2006, BA2, July 31st, 2009, BA3, May 1st, 2015, BA1, January 2016, BA1 on watch, and March 2016, we have downgraded as a BA3. I want to take this opportunity to state that this board, which I am chairman of, came into this seat on September 30th. So we are just over 170 days in. Oil price was $45.09 WTI, and I want to put it in its correct context. The oil price today, I have my phone off, but the last one I saw was about $39.09 running WTI, or $39.44 running now. So that is going south. But throughput, when we came in, throughput was 103,220 barrels per day, and you hear a little bit about it further today. We are now running about 155,000 barrels per day for March. We had about 165,000 barrels per day one day on March 1st. The refinery utilization now is close to 80%. When we came in, the refinery utilization was about 68%. Our crude oil production was 43,835 barrels of oil per day on that day. We are close to that. We are just about 100 barrels of oil per day off with respect to that. Employment was over 5,000 persons. We are still over 5,000 persons.